The plasma bolt missed Jake Martinez by inches, scorching the metal corridor wall behind him. He dove through the airlock door just as another volley of energy blasts tore through the space where he had been standing. His heart hammered against his ribs as he slammed his fist on the emergency seal button. The door hissed shut, cutting off the sounds of battle from the main deck. Jake pressed his back against the cold wall, gasping for breath. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye, and his engineering jumpsuit was torn at the shoulder. The research station was under attack, and he had no idea who was winning. A shadow moved in the dimly lit corridor ahead. Jake's hand instinctively went to his hip, searching for a weapon he didn't have. He was a civilian engineer, not a soldier. All he had was a plasma torch used for welding hull breaches. The shadow became a figure, tall and armored in dark metal that seemed to absorb the light. The armor was unlike anything Jake had seen before, covered in intricate patterns that glowed with a faint blue luminescence. The figure moved with predatory grace, each step deliberate and measured. Jake raised his hand slowly. "I'm not armed. I'm just an engineer." The figure stopped 3 meters away. Through the tinted visor, he could see nothing of the face beneath. The armor was clearly alien in design, but the proportions suggested a humanoid form. Female, if he had to guess, based on the contours. "Please," Jake said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I don't want trouble. I just want to get to the escape pods." The armored figure tilted her head, studying him. Then she spoke, her voice filtered through the helmet speakers. "You are human." It wasn't a question, but Jake nodded anyway. "Yes. From Earth. I work here as a maintenance engineer." She took a step closer. Jake's muscles tensed, ready to run, though he knew it would be useless. If she wanted him dead, he would be dead. "The station is lost," she said. "The Kreth have breached 3 sectors. Your people are evacuating." The Kreth? Jake had heard rumors about the Kreth, a warrior race that had been expanding aggressively through this sector. "Are you with them?" "No." The single word carried weight. "I fight them." Before Jake could respond, an explosion rocked the corridor. He stumbled forward, arms windmilling for balance. His hand shot out, grasping for anything to steady himself. His palm connected with her armored chest plate, right over where a human heart would be. The effect was immediate and shocking. The warrior went completely rigid, as if every muscle in her body had locked simultaneously. The blue patterns on her armor flared brilliant white, then shifted to a deep crimson color that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake jerked his hand back, horrified. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." She slowly turned her head toward him. Even through the helmet, he could feel the intensity of her stare. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with something Jake couldn't identify. "You just claimed me." Jake stared at her, confusion mixing with the adrenaline already flooding his system. "What? I don't understand." "I just touched your armor. It was an accident." The warrior remained frozen for another moment, then seemed to gather herself. The crimson glow on her armor dimmed slightly, but didn't disappear. She reached up and removed her helmet with a soft hiss of depressurizing seals. The face beneath took Jake's breath away. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin was a pale silver color, almost luminescent in the dim corridor lighting. High cheekbones framed violet eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a cascade of fine crystalline strands that moved as if underwater, shifting through shades of white and pale blue. But it was the expression on her face that struck Jake most deeply. She looked stunned, vulnerable, and something else he couldn't quite place. Fear? Wonder? Both? "I am Commander Lyra Vex of the Valtorian Empire," she said, her unfiltered voice carrying a musical quality that the helmet had muted. "And you, human, have just done something that should be impossible." Another explosion, closer this time, shook the floor beneath their feet. Red emergency lights began strobing down the corridor. An automated voice echoed through the station's speakers. "Hull breach detected in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." This is not a drill. Jake's engineering instincts kicked in despite the surreal situation. "We need to move. This whole section is going to decompress in minutes." He turned toward the emergency stairwell, then looked back when Lyra didn't follow. "Are you coming or not?" She seemed to shake herself from whatever thoughts had paralyzed her. "But we need to talk about what just happened. Can we talk while not dying?" Jake pushed through the stairwell door, taking the steps two at a time. Behind him, he heard the heavy footfalls of Lyra's armored boots. They climbed 3 levels before Jake had to stop, his lungs burning. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't trained for this kind of physical exertion. Lyra barely seemed winded, despite wearing what must have been 50 kilograms of armor. "You are weak," she observed, not unkindly. "Your species has no natural enhancements?" "We're not all soldiers," Jake gasped. "Some of us just fix things for a living." Lyra studied him with those unsettling violet eyes. "You fix things. A builder, then. A creator." She said it as if the words held special significance. "That explains something, perhaps?" "Explains what?" Jake straightened up, getting his breathing under control. "What did you mean when you said I claimed you? I just touched your armor." "You touched the heart plate," Lyra said quietly. She placed her own hand over the center of her chest where Jake's palm had made contact. The armor there still glowed with that deep crimson pulse. "Among my people, the Valtorians, our armor is not merely protection. It is bonded to us at a molecular level from the day we join the warrior caste. It responds to our thoughts, our emotions, our very life force." Jake listened, his engineer's mind trying to process the implications. Some kind of neural interface? Quantum entanglement between the wearer and the material? Lyra's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "Your species has terms for it, then?" "Yes, something like that. But there is more. The heart plate is sacred. It can only be touched by the warrior who wears it, or by their bonded mate. When another touches it and the armor accepts them, it creates an unbreakable bond, a claim." The words hung in the air between them. Jake felt his face grow hot despite the cold fear still gripping his chest. "But I'm human. I'm not even the same species as you. How could your armor accept me?" "It should not have," Lyra admitted. She looked down at her armor, at the crimson glow that continued to pulse. "In all of Valtorian history, spanning thousands of years, the heart plate has never accepted anyone outside our species. Never. What you did should be impossible." Footsteps echoed from somewhere below them in the stairwell. Harsh voices shouted in a language Jake didn't recognize. Lyra's expression hardened instantly. She grabbed Jake's arm with surprising gentleness given her armored gauntlet. "The Kreth Hunters. They've tracked us." She pulled him toward the door leading to the next level. "We cannot fight them here. Too many. And you have no protection." They burst through the door into a cargo bay. Massive shipping containers were stacked in neat rows, creating a maze of metal corridors. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and black. Across the bay, Jake could see a row of emergency escape pods, their green, ready lights glowing like beacons of hope. "There." He pointed. "We can get out through one of those." Lyra nodded, but her attention was focused on the door they had just come through. She could hear what Jake couldn't yet, the approaching enemy closing in fast. Her hand moved to a weapon at her hip, drawing what looked like a sword made of condensed light and dark matter. "Go," she commanded. "Get to the pod. I will hold them here." Jake looked at this alien warrior woman who claimed he had somehow bonded with her through an accidental touch. He thought about running, about saving himself. Then he thought about the kind of person who would run and leave someone else to die, even if that someone was a trained warrior and he was just an engineer. "No," he said, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. "You said I claimed you. That goes both ways. I'm not leaving you behind." Lyra turned to look at him, her violet eyes wide with something that might have been respect, or perhaps disbelief that this soft human would choose to stay. The door burst open, dark shapes poured through, and the sound of energy weapons charging filled the air. The Kreth were nightmares made flesh. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in thick, chitinous plates that looked like black volcanic rock. 4 arms sprouted from their torsos, each ending in clawed hands that gripped various weapons. Their faces were elongated skulls with rows of teeth and multiple glowing red eyes that tracked movement with predatory precision. Lyra moved like lightning. Her energy blade sang through the air, intercepting the first volley of plasma bolts. The shots deflected harmlessly into the cargo containers, melting holes through the metal. She was a blur of motion, her armor enhancing her already formidable speed and strength. But there were too many. Jake counted at least 10 Kreth warriors pouring through the door, with more behind them. Even as Lyra cut down the first attacker, 2 more moved to flank her position. Jake's eyes darted around the cargo bay, his engineer's mind working frantically. There had to be something he could use, some advantage he could create. His gaze locked onto a control panel mounted on the wall 15 meters away. It controlled the magnetic clamps holding the shipping containers in place. He ran, his legs pumped as hard as they could, each breath burning in his lungs. Behind him, he heard the clash of weapons and the distinctive sound of energy discharges. He didn't look back. Looking back would slow him down, and every second mattered. A plasma bolt scorched the air next to his head. Jake dove the last few meters, sliding across the metal floor and slamming into the base of the control panel. His fingers flew over the interface, accessing the emergency release protocols he had installed himself 3 months ago during routine maintenance. "Lyra," he shouted, "get clear of the containers." To her credit, the Valtorian warrior didn't hesitate or question. She vaulted backward, her armor's propulsion systems giving her an extra boost. She cleared the nearest row of containers just as Jake activated the release. The magnetic clamps disengaged simultaneously. 300 tons of shipping containers, no longer held in place by the station's artificial gravity systems, began to shift. The station's slow rotation created a gentle drift, but 300 tons drifting was still 300 tons of unstoppable force. The Kreth warriors barely had time to realize what was happening. The massive metal boxes slid sideways, crushing the aliens between container walls and bulkheads. Screams of rage and pain echoed through the cargo bay, cut short by the sound of crunching chitin and metal. When the containers finally settled, 5 Kreth lay dead or dying beneath the shifted cargo. The remaining 5 had scrambled clear, but the attack had been disrupted. More importantly, a clear path to the escape pods now existed, the containers having formed a makeshift barrier between them and the enemy. "Move!" Lyra grabbed Jake's hand, pulling him to his feet. They sprinted across the open space, Jake's shorter legs struggling to keep pace with her armored stride. They reached the escape pod bay with the Kreth close behind. Jake slammed his palm against the access panel for the nearest pod. The door hissed open, revealing the cramped interior designed for 4 people in an emergency. Lyra shoved him inside first, then turned to face the approaching Kreth. Her energy blade came up in a defensive stance, ready to buy the seconds Jake would need to launch the pod. But one of the Kreth had circled around. Jake saw it emerge from behind a support pillar, one of its 4 arms raising a weapon that looked like a cannon fused with organic tissue. The barrel glowed with building energy, aimed directly at Lyra's unprotected back. Jake didn't think. His hand shot out and grabbed Lyra's arm, yanking her backward with every ounce of strength he possessed. She stumbled into the pod, her eyes wide with surprise. The energy blast missed her by centimeters, instead striking the pod's door mechanism. Sparks flew as the controls fried, but the door was still closing, its emergency protocols overriding the damage. "Strap in!" Jake shouted, throwing himself into one of the acceleration seats. His fingers worked the launch controls, entering the emergency override codes. Lyra fell into the seat beside him, her armor making the metal frame creak. "You pulled me back. You saved my life." "You saved mine first," Jake said, his attention focused on the launch sequence. 3 seconds to launch. Through the pod's small window, they could see the Kreth warriors reaching the bay. One of them raised its weapon, aiming at the pod itself. 2 seconds. The weapon fired. The blast struck the pod's hull, but the reinforced shielding held. Barely. 1 second. The explosive bolts fired. The escape pod shot away from the dying station like a bullet from a gun. The acceleration slammed Jake back into his seat with crushing force. His vision tunneled, gray creeping in at the edges. Then the pressure eased as the pod's inertial dampeners kicked in. Jake gasped for air, his whole body aching from the launch trauma. Beside him, Lyra looked barely affected, her armored form built to withstand forces that would kill an unaugmented human. Through the window, the research station was visible, growing smaller with each passing second. Sections of it were dark, others venting atmosphere into space. Small explosions blossomed across its surface like deadly flowers. "The others," Jake said quietly. "Did anyone else make it out?" Lyra checked the pod sensor readout. 23 other pods launched before the Kreth took the evacuation bays. "Your people are survivors. They escaped." Relief washed through Jake, so intense it made him dizzy. He hadn't gotten everyone killed. Some had made it. That had to be enough. "Where does this pod go?" Lyra asked, studying the navigation display with a critical eye. Jake pulled up the trajectory plot. "The nearest human colony is Centauri Station, about 4 days away at this pod's maximum speed. There's an automated beacon that should alert them to pick us up." 4 days. Lyra looked at him, those violet eyes unreadable. 4 days trapped in this small space together. "Is that a problem?" Jake asked, suddenly aware of just how cramped the pod really was. Their seats were less than a meter apart. "No," Lyra said slowly, "but we need to talk about the bond, about what it means that my armor accepted your claim. Because whether you understand it or not, human, you and I are now connected in ways that will change both our lives forever." Jake leaned back in his seat, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He had survived an alien attack, escaped a dying space station, and apparently accidentally married an alien warrior princess through a quirk of her living armor. It had been one hell of a day, and it was only going to get more complicated from here. The first day in the escape pod passed in relative silence. Lyra spent most of her time monitoring the pod's systems and checking for any pursuing Kreth vessels. Jake tried to sleep, but his mind kept replaying the attack, seeing the faces of colleagues he might never see again. By the second day, the silence became unbearable. "Tell me about the bond," Jake said, breaking the quiet that had settled between them. You said my touching your heart plate created some kind of connection. What does that actually mean? Lyra had removed most of her armor to conserve the pod's limited power supply. Without it, she looked more vulnerable, more real. She wore a form-fitting bodysuit beneath the armor, and her crystalline hair caught the pod's interior lighting in mesmerizing ways. The heartplate bond is sacred among my people, she began, her voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting history. When a Valtorian warrior is bonded to their armor, a part of their essence merges with the material. The armor becomes an extension of their body, responding to their thoughts and emotions. But the heartplate, the piece over the heart, remains separate, pure. It can only be touched by the warrior themselves or by the one they choose as their mate. But I didn't choose anything, Jake protested. It was an accident. I was falling and grabbed onto you for balance. Intent does not matter, Lyra said. The armor itself chooses. If it rejects a touch, the person dies instantly. Their nervous system overloads from the feedback. I have seen it happen to enemies who tried to strike at a warrior's heartplate. They drop dead before their hand even makes full contact. Jake felt his stomach drop. So when I touched you, I could have died? Yes. The fact that you did not, that the armor instead accepted you and changed from battle blue to bonded red, means something profound. It means the armor recognized you as worthy, as my equal, as my chosen mate. The words hung in the small space between them. Jake struggled to process the implications. But we just met. We're different species. I don't even know your favorite color or what you like to eat. How can we be mates? Lyra's expression softened slightly, the first hint of vulnerability Jake had seen from her. I do not have the answers you seek. This has never happened before. Perhaps the bond is different because you are human. Perhaps the armor sensed something in you that transcends species. She paused, then added quietly, or perhaps the universe simply has a sense of humor. Despite everything, Jake laughed. The sound was unexpected, and it seemed to surprise Lyra as much as it surprised him. You made a joke. I didn't think warrior commanders were allowed to make jokes. We are not supposed to, Lyra admitted. And Jake could have sworn he saw the hint of a smile on her lips. But then, we are also not supposed to be bonded to alien engineers, so I am already breaking several major protocols. Over the next hours, they talked. Really talked not about the bond or the Kreth or the attack, but about themselves. Jake learned that Lyra had been a warrior for 15 standard years, that she had risen through the ranks faster than any Valtorian in recent history, that she loved the challenge of impossible missions. He learned that her favorite food was something called starberries that grew on her homeworld, and that she had a younger brother who had chosen to be a scholar rather than a warrior. Lyra learned that Jake had always been fascinated by how things worked, that he had left Earth at 23 to see the galaxy, that he missed real coffee more than he missed his family sometimes. She learned about human music and movies, about Earth's oceans and mountains, about the stubborn human tendency to never give up, even when logic said they should. Your species is strange, Lyra said after Jake had finished explaining how humans had gone from primitive technology to spaceflight in less than 2 centuries. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced abilities. You are fragile and weak compared to most spacefaring races. Yet you spread across the stars as if they were yours by right. We're stubborn, Jake said with a shrug. We don't know when to quit. My grandfather used to say that humans are too dumb to know when we're beaten, so we just keep going until we win. Perhaps that is why the armor accepted you, Lyra mused. Valtorian armor respects strength, but also respects will, the determination to never surrender, to protect what matters even at great cost. You showed that when you stayed to fight with me instead of running to the pod alone." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp beeping from the navigation console. Lyra moved to check it, her expression darkening as she read the display. "We have a problem," she said. "There is a ship on an intercept course. It will reach us in approximately 6 hours." Jake joined her at the console, his engineer's eye scanning the data. "Can you identify it? Is it human rescue or Kreth pursuit?" "Neither." Lyra's finger traced the energy signature on the screen. "It is Valtorian, a war cruiser from my own fleet. That's good though, right?" Jake felt a surge of hope. "Your people can protect us from the Kreth." "You do not understand." Lyra turned to face him, and Jake saw genuine fear in her violet eyes for the first time. "The bond between us, it is visible to any Valtorian who sees my armor. The red glow of the heart plate announces it to anyone with eyes. When my people see that I have bonded with a human, with an alien, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that involve courts-martial, disgrace, and possibly execution." Lyra sat back down, her shoulders slumping in a rare display of defeated body language. "I am bonded to you now, Jake Martinez. That means I am bound by honor to protect you, to stand by you, to defend you even against my own people if necessary. But it also means I have broken one of our most sacred laws." Jake felt his mouth go dry. "There's a law against bonding with aliens?" "There is a law that says the heartplate bond can only occur between Valtorians, because it has never happened any other way. Until now." She looked up at him. "When that cruiser arrives, I will have to make a choice. I can claim the bond was accidental, that you somehow tricked the armor, and they might spare your life while they strip me of my rank and armor. Or I can claim the bond is true and willing, and we both face whatever judgment they decree." "What happens if we run?" Jake asked. "This pod has some fuel left. We could change course, try to reach Centauri Station before they catch us." "They would hunt us across the galaxy," Lyra said flatly. "A Valtorian war cruiser is faster than this escape pod by an order of magnitude. We would have perhaps an hour head start before they overtook us, and running would be seen as an admission of guilt, making our situation worse." Jake paced the small confines of the pod, his mind racing. There had to be a solution, some way out of this mess that didn't end with both of them dead or imprisoned. He was an engineer, trained to solve problems, to find the weaknesses in systems and exploit them. "Then we don't run," he said finally. "We face them, but we do it smart. Tell me everything about Valtorian law, about the bond protocols, about any possible loopholes or precedents we can use." Lyra stared at him. "Do you want to argue our case? To stand before a Valtorian tribunal and defend the impossible?" "Yes," Jake said, meeting her gaze with determination. "Because giving up isn't what humans do. And if your armor bonded with me, maybe it saw something worth fighting for." The Valtorian war cruiser was massive. Through the escape pod's window, it looked like a mountain floating in space, all sleek lines and deadly purpose. Its hull was the same dark metal as Lyra's armor, covered in glowing patterns that pulsed with power. Weapon arrays bristled from every angle, each one capable of reducing the tiny escape pod to atoms. A tractor beam locked onto them, pulling the pod into one of the cruiser's docking bays. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. Lyra had spent the last hours coaching him on Valtorian customs and protocols. He knew how to stand, how to speak, how to show respect without showing weakness. The pod's door opened. 6 Valtorian warriors stood waiting, their armor gleaming in the harsh bay lights. Each was armed, hands resting near weapons but not quite drawn. Their eyes, all various shades of violet and blue, fixed on Lyra first, then shifted to Jake. He saw shock register on several faces as they noticed the crimson glow of Lyra's heartplate. The lead warrior, an older male with silver streaks in his crystalline hair, stepped forward. "Commander Vex, you were reported missing after the attack on the human research station. We came to find you." His eyes dropped to her chest, to the telltale red glow. "But it seems you have been found by something else entirely." "Captain Callan," Lyra said, her voice formal and controlled. "I request formal audience with you in your ready room. There are matters that must be discussed." Kalen's jaw tightened. "That is an understatement, Commander. You will both come with me, and the human will be restrained as a precaution." "He will not," Lyra said, steel in her voice. "Jake Martinez is bonded to me. He is under my protection. Any who harm him will answer to me." The tension in the docking bay ratcheted up instantly. Several warriors shifted their stances, hands moving closer to weapons. Kalen raised a hand forestalling any violence. "Very well. But understand that your protection may not be enough to save him from what is coming." He turned and walked toward the exit. "Follow me, both of you." They walked through corridors that reminded Jake of a warship mixed with an art gallery. Every surface was decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories in a visual language he couldn't quite read. Other Valtorians they passed stopped and stared, their shock at seeing a human aboard their vessel evident. Kalen's ready room was surprisingly simple. A desk, chairs, and one wall dominated by a viewport showing the stars. The captain sat behind his desk and gestured for them to stand before him. "Explain," he said simply. Lyra stood at attention, every inch the warrior commander, despite her missing armor pieces. "During the Kreth attack on the human station, I was engaged in combat when the human engineer Jake Martinez accidentally made physical contact with my heartplate while trying to maintain his balance. The armor accepted his touch. The bond formed instantaneously." "Impossible," Kalen said flatly. "The heartplate bond is species-specific. It has been that way for 3,000 years." "Impossible, yet it happened," Lyra replied. "Captain, you know me. You trained me. Have I ever been given to flights of fancy or deception?" Callan's expression softened slightly. "No, Commander. You have always been the most honorable warrior under my command, which is why this situation troubles me so deeply." He turned his attention to Jake. "Human, speak. What is your understanding of what occurred?" Jake took a breath, remembering everything Lyra had taught him. "Captain Callan, with respect, I understand that I have become part of something sacred to your people through pure accident. I did not seek this bond. I did not even know it was possible. But Commander Vex saved my life during the attack, and I refused to abandon her when she stood to fight. If that makes me worthy in the eyes of her armor, then I accept that worthiness and the responsibilities that come with it." Kalen leaned back, studying Jake with an intensity that made the human want to squirm. After a long moment, he spoke. "You are aware that by Valtorian law your very existence as Lyra's bonded mate is a violation of ancient tradition." "I am aware," Jake said. "I am also aware that traditions are made by people, not by armor. If Commander Vex's armor chose to accept me, perhaps that is a sign that your traditions need to evolve." Several warriors who had entered to stand guard gasped at the audacity of a human suggesting Valtorian traditions should change. Kalen held up a hand for silence. "A bold statement," the captain said. "Some would call it arrogant." "My people call it adaptation," Jake replied. "We have a saying on Earth, When the world changes, you can either change with it or be left behind. Commander Vex's armor chose me for a reason. Maybe that reason is bigger than either of us. Kalen stood and walked to the viewport, his back to them. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, he turned around. Commander Vex, you are aware that I must report this incident to the Valtorian High Command. They will want to study this phenomenon, to understand how a human could be accepted by warrior armor. There will be hearings, debates, possibly even attempts to separate you from your bonded mate. I am aware, Captain, Lyra said quietly, and I am prepared to face whatever comes, but I will not renounce the bond. My armor chose true, and I stand by that choice. Kalen nodded slowly. Then you should also know that I will speak in your defense at those hearings, because in my 20 years of command, I have learned that the universe often has wisdom beyond our understanding. If the armor accepted this human, there must be a reason, and I would rather adapt our traditions than lose one of the finest warriors I have ever known. Relief washed through Jake so intensely his knees almost buckled. Beside him, Lyra remained at attention, but he saw her shoulders relax slightly. However, Callan continued, his voice hardening, until the High Command makes their decision, you are both restricted to this vessel. You will be assigned quarters together, since separating bonded mates would be cruel. And human, you will begin training. If you are to be bonded to a Valtorian warrior, you cannot remain as weak and unprotected as you are now. We will teach you to fight, to survive, to be worthy of the bond you carry. Jake blinked. You're going to train me to be a warrior? We are going to try, Callan said with the faintest hint of amusement. Whether you survive the training is another question entirely. Valtorian combat instruction is not gentle. I'll survive, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. Humans are stubborn that way. Colin dismissed them with a gesture. As they walked back through the corridors, escorted by 2 guards, Lyra finally allowed herself a small smile. You impressed him, she said quietly. That is not easy to do. I just told the truth, Jake replied. That's usually the best policy in my experience. They reached their assigned quarters, a space larger than the escape pod but still compact by human standards. The door closed behind them, leaving them alone for the first time since boarding the cruiser. Lyra turned to face Jake, her violet eyes searching his face. You understand what you have agreed to? The training will be brutal. Many Valtarians do not survive their first year of warrior instruction. And you are not Valtorian. You will be at a severe disadvantage. I know, Jake said, but I also know that I'm not going to let you face this alone. You said the bond goes both ways. Well, that means if you're stuck with me, I'm stuck with you too. And I keep my commitments. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then did something that surprised him completely. She reached up and touched his face with her bare hand, her skin cool against his. Perhaps the armor knew what it was doing after all. Perhaps it saw in you what I am only beginning to understand. Strength is not just physical power. It is also the strength to stand firm when others would run, to face impossible odds with courage and hope. Jake covered her hand with his own. So what happens now? Now we wait for the High Command's decision. We train, we prepare, and we prove to the Valtorian Empire that sometimes the impossible is just another problem waiting to be solved. Her smile grew wider. I think I am starting to understand this human stubbornness you speak of. It's contagious, Jake warned. Spend enough time around us and you might catch it. Good, Lyra said. I believe we will need all the stubbornness we can gather for what comes next. Through the viewport of their quarters, the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, the Kreth continued their expansion. Somewhere out there, the Valtorian High Command was preparing to judge their unprecedented bond. Somewhere out there, the future waited with all its uncertainties and challenges. But for now, in this moment, Jake Martinez and Lyra Vex stood together. An engineer and a warrior, a human and a Valtorian. Two beings from different worlds, joined by an accidental touch that had changed everything. And somehow, against all odds and logic, it felt right.